intellectuals, right? Because they talk about the importance of world history, right? Because one of the things when you study when you study any body of history, you realize you need to have an understanding if your work is going to be broad and if you're really going to really be able to dissect a particular experience, you're going to have to be able to trace the lines. And oftentimes that is going to carry you beyond your subject of learning. Okay. Hope.
We're doing good.
Any questions?
Who's got questions?
What does the term maroon, what does that actually mean, and how did it come to transfer to, like you said, Jamaica and so many other islands, and then into the United States as it applies to people that ran away to the hills, so to speak?
Maroon comes out of the Spanish word, and it's a word that the Spanish had initially used, right, to refer to wild hogs running away. Okay. When it would come, and then because enslaved Africans were running off, they applied it. First, the Spaniards were calling them Sierra Maroons, and then the British now anglicized the word and used the term maroon to describe this process as well. So and then the French have the term marinage, and it basically is a terminology that is developed to describe enslaved people that ran away and escaped off the plantation, right? And yeah.
So is that now a distinct ethnic group?
Well, it has become a distinct ethnic group in certain places, like in Jamaica, the treaty, those who I call treaty Maroons, they refer to themselves as Maroons, and they're identified in the census as Maroons. When you go to Suriname, right, you will see that there are Maroon communities and people who identify them as such. In Florida, they don't use the term so much per se, but you do have communities that identify as Maroons there. Seminole people and those people and so forth.
Today?
Yeah, today.
Today?
Yeah, today.
Like what regions of Florida?
Seminoles in what region? Northern Florida, right?
Yeah, Northern Florida.
Northern Florida.
Yeah, Northern Florida.
I did a pipe on it.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah, Northern Florida.
And some of them are mixed African and Native American, is
Yeah,
that right?
yeah, you're going to find that as well. Because what you'll find is that when you look at the island of Hispaniola, which is today occupied by the countries of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, you'll find that, in the early period when enslaved Africans were first imported there, that they escaped at the same time that the Tainos, who are indigenous to the space, were also escaping into the hills. So you have intermarriage. The Jamaican reality is the same thing as well, right, in the early period. And you have different periods. You have the period where after intermarriage, you have the period where you have a lot of other groups that came in that may not necessarily have as high as admixture of indigenous groups inside of them as well. So yes, you do have those that have that admixture, as you'll find with the black Seminoles in Florida. Yeah.
You said that you discussed, you did research on stowaways on ships.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Okay, yeah. During the enslaved people period in places like Jamaica, you had a lot of ships that would visit the island. I don't know if you're familiar with, I'm sort of jumping back between the US and Jamaica. Mm-hmm. If you're familiar with Wells Brown, the abolitionist, he escaped aboard a ship. Frederick Douglass, he also used ships to escape as well. That's an example of stowaways, right? the Jamaican space, you also had stowaways, right? And so a lot of times they don't describe Frederick Douglass as a maritime maroon, but in my dissertation I identified Frederick Douglass as a maritime maroon. and so forth, because I mean it's a concept that can be applied across the board. It's just using the waterways, whether as a stowaway or what have you, to escape from bondage. So the thing about it is that in the Jamaican space, you had a lot of military ships that would visit the island. You had a lot of trading ships, and enslaved Africans would escape on board these ships. They were either posed as free people, as servants, or they would try to hide out in spaces aboard the slave ship. One of the persons that I look at in my dissertation is an enslaved African by the name of Sharper. Sharper had tried to leave Jamaica over 5 times. He was captured over 5 times aboard military ships. He was trying to pass as a worker aboard a military ship, because you also have to bear in mind that there were enslaved people that worked aboard ships during that period. Denmark Vesey, who was later acquired his freedom, was enslaved aboard a ship, a trading ship. So you had enslaved people that would try to store away or hide out aboard slave ship by trying to blend into the black population on these ships. And Sharper attempted 5 times to leave the island through this means. His intention was to he was originally from New York. In fact, his intention was to get back to New York. Right? He said that he was taken out illegally when the British left, right? And he had wife and children. All right. Another African I discussed like that. Sharper was born in the United States, but this other one that I looked at is Cromwell. Cromwell, he was actually born in Ghana. He's an Akan, but he was enslaved in New York. But when he had a wife and he was free, right, according to his claims. And when the British left, they took him and enslaved him in Jamaica. And he was trying to leave the island, and he said he was trying to unite with his wife and his children in New York. So there's these different stories that evolve. I talked about an Afro-American by the name of Davy. Davy is from Virginia, right? I don't have the dates off the top of my head, but this is all late 18th century. Davy is from Virginia, and he also was trying to get back to, he said, his family, his friends, and da. So so beneath this story, you can imagine, and it's another thing you have to do as a historian, and it's one of the things that one of my professors at Howard, he's from the Sudan. I forgot his name. Oh boy, and I can see his picture.
It's the middle of the semester.
I can see his face right in front of me. But he always told me about feeling the history, right? Sometimes there's things that are not written, but you should be able to interpret, right? And Bertrand, Dr. Bertrand, right? He's mentioned about this thing about feeling the history. So one of the things is that you have to look in between the lines. You look at Davy, you look at Cromwell, you look at Sharper. There's a narrative there that the documents are not going to discuss. And it is longing to unify with family, longing to be with his wife again, wondering the human story, the human element. So these are some of the things that I discuss in creative ways. So history sometimes is also partly invention. You use the documents, but sometimes you have to invent a narrative based upon what possibly could be the situation. right? I don't know if you agree with me in doing that, but you have this thing called where you have to feel and interpret and suggest. I guess suggest is a more academic way of putting it, right? Not invent. Yeah, suggest. Yeah, suggestion. I shouldn't say invention.
You have to interpret, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a historical tool.
Yeah, but not invent.
Interpretation.
Interpretation. You know, historians don't like to use the term invent because they say you're falsifying.
Yeah, the people will come after you with pitchforks.
Yeah. But interpret is also invention in a way,
Yes.
but it's a more subtle way of saying it. Sorry, I shouldn't tell you guys to invent, but interpret. Yes.
This is a more personal question, but
Yes.
which degree did you get from Howard, and what program were you in?
Okay. Yeah, man. I was inside of the history department. It's PhD.
Is it the PhD program?
Yeah, PhD in history.
How did you enjoy that program?
Yeah, man. I enjoyed it a lot, man.
I'm strongly consider Howard.
Yeah, man. I have a very good friend there, Kito Swan. He's on the faculty. Should be full professor now.
Dr. Chapman's a Howard grad too.
Yeah,
He
he's the
even
one
know.
who sparked my interest in that little.
Yeah.
He was in African and African American studies. wasn't he?
Yeah, the African American Studies,
Yeah.
which is down the hill from the history department. Yeah, man. You will enjoy it. Yeah.
Can you talk to them a little bit about your public history work too?
Okay, yeah. I work in public history. Like I said, when I left, I worked in museums. So the Institute of Jamaica, I worked as a curator. Initially, that is the direction I had really wanted to go into, because, you know, when I migrated to the United States, I was living in New York, and I had worked for a museum and I was really fascinated with the Dinizulu Center for African Culture Research. They had a children museum, so I worked with them. And when I finished up Howard, and I said when I returned home to Jamaica, I want to work in museums, because, you know, I found museums to be interesting because it's a way to communicate with the public. You know, as an academic, you're writing papers, you're writing books, but it tends to not circulate widely, right? Unless a person is interested in reading, right? So I was fascinated with how exhibitions created dialogue with the public. So when I left, that was one of my intentions. I really wanted to work as a curator. I sort of got discouraged because now being a curator now, you began to see the politics. You don't control the exhibit. The story and the narrative is controlled many times by donors. Jamaica is a smaller society, so you have to deal with the different classes of people and how they will view a particular exhibition. So you realize that there was all of this vetting process that had to go through before exhibits were approved. So I was saying, whoa, this is really difficult. It's a lot of fighting, right? And it's not that I don't enjoy museum, I just don't enjoy the fighting aspect, where you are inside of meetings for 5 hours trying to explain a historical point to a businessman, where you're trying to get his money, and you're trying to explain, and you know, and then when you have the newspapers will come and they will critique your exhibit, and then people will say, oh, you never include this was not included, and da 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 da. So you realize, I lift my hat off to people who work in museums, right? As curators especially. I would go back into it as a director, not as a curator. Director, no, you hire the curator. And the curator handles the brunt of the attacks. But I enjoy museum, because one of the things about museum, aside from the political piece, is that you get a chance to see the public, talk to the public, right? And to me, that is very priceless. As a historian, in academia, you largely live a life as a loner, you know, right? You need to get your papers out. When your paper comes out, you do your conferences, and that's when you get to talk, but many times it's still to an academic community. Once you begin to publish books now, you might find yourself engaging more with the community, right? Because you might find yourself being asked to speak at this church or da 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 da, right? As you advance further in the field, you might find yourself getting invitations, like, you know, I'm invited to sit on a panel next semester, looking at the question of obia. So you get to talk to the community in that way. So you realize that in academia, largely though, you still exist very much as a loner with your ideas, your concept, your interpretation of a particular event and space, and you're in your office at weird hours trying to write. Like when was it? I'm preparing for a conference in November in Washington D.C. Right. So I was here up until 4 o'clock yesterday morning. This morning, 4 o'clock this morning. Right. I got into the office like about 4 o'clock on Sunday. Usually I have writing goals, like I'll write for 4 hours, break for like an hour or two, then write again for 4. So I was here till 4 trying to finish the paper, because one of my things is that now if I'm going to do a conference, I want the paper publication ready. So like the paper I put out last semester, this semester in August, that came out in August, right? I wrote it last semester for a conference I did in Cuba, right? And because that's my goal. So understanding more the business side of academia, right? So there's this business side where everything has to be managed properly, right? I don't want to do conferences, and then you look and you don't have a paper. It makes no sense. So I want to pace myself, where if I can do 1 conference for the year, at least I can have 1 article that is publication ready. I prefer to do that in opposed to 3 conferences and no paper, right? So it's all about pacing yourself, and you have to just make up your mind your own pace, right? Different people produce at different rates. Some people can do 3 papers in a year, right? I prefer to do 1, take my time, build myself up. So that's my approach. Everybody has to develop their approach, right? So, but you find yourself largely living a lonely life. I mean, you people will see you at a conference and they'll see a paper, they'll see a paper published, but but other times they don't see what goes into it. Same thing with the dissertation, right? When you get ready for the dissertation level, if you're going to pursue a PhD, you're going to realize that you have to buckle down, right? And literally bunker down. Always. I mean, if you want to be out of graduate school within 4 years, right? Right. So I did the master's and the PhD in 5 years, and you have to have your topic beforehand. So I was fascinated with Maroons and runaways from undergrad. At Howard, I was going to the newspapers from an undergraduate student, so I carried that research into my graduate work. So if you have your projects already, right, all you have to do is the coursework and the comps, and then once you get there now, you take 1 year to write. That's my recommendation. But if you're going to take 1 year to write, you know that you're going to be 9 hours, 8 hours in the library. So you realize academia is a lonely life. But you know, museums, the public history piece is good. It gives you at the public presentation. Some people can mix public history and write and produce at the same time. I found it difficult as a curator, you know, having to help and assist with grants, having to go to board meetings, You know, I mean, I found myself exhausted doing a 5-hour work week and getting up at 6. You know, I found it difficult to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to write. So I came back into academia because I saw where I was not producing where I should be producing. So I wanted to publish more. Some people can do the curator work and publish at the same time, right? And it depends on how the museum do it. I was in Jamaica, so they don't do museum like how the Smithsonian does museum. They do how can I pronounce words? Smithsonian, right? They do it like an academic position.
Yeah.
Yeah. So different museums function differently. So you have some museums that structure it as an academic program and as an academic exercise. If you can get into a setup like that, excellent. But other museums, you have to. It's a 9 to 5, and it's very grueling and taxing and so forth. Yeah. But I enjoyed it because one of the proposals I worked on to revamp People's Museum in Spanish Town, which is a museum that talks about emancipation history. They're currently renovating that museum now. So you see where eventually your ideas can assist in development and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yes.
In my position as director at the Margaret Walker Center, if I'm going to work on a journal article
Yes.
or a conference paper,
Yeah.
or when I was finishing my book,
Yeah.
I would disappear.
Yeah.
I wouldn't come into the office. I would have to have,
Yeah.
I will spend a couple of days a week
Yeah.
away
Yeah.
where nobody can find me except people who really need to find me, like the boss.
Yeah.
They can call me on my cell phone if they need me.
Yeah.
Where I can just focus on writing.
Yeah.
Because I can't be in the center and
Exactly.
doing the work of the center and get academic work done.
No, you can't.
Because it's too much. There's too much going on.
Of course, because you're dealing with the public. No, you have different things. Museum is not academia. Academia, you can waste time if you don't manage yourself properly.
The good thing for me, and I think Rico probably finds this too, being at Jackson State and having one foot in the museum world and one foot in the academic world, there is an expectation
Yeah.
that we're publishing, and so
Exactly.
it's okay for me, especially with staff who I trust and
Yeah.
who are good. It's okay for me to back off and be
Yeah.
gone for a day and
Yeah.
just focus on spend a day writing.
Yeah.
And as far as your dissertation goes, I
Yeah.
did the same thing. I
Yeah.
spent a year I took out student loans and I spent a year writing my dissertation.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I did. I
Yeah.
wrote it in a year.
Yeah.
And focused on. And graduate school is hard, guys. And I mean, getting a doctorate it's hard work. They don't give them away. And you have to be self-motivated. It has to be something that you want and that you like and that you're into.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's not